noise!
Welcome back to the next part of this Truth and Rhythm episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. Also become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Enjoy. Hey, before we get started with today's show, I just want to draw your attention to new merchandise. Funkin' Stuff and Truth and Rhythm designs are in, and they look pretty darn cool. So show your support, help support the program, and show off some stylish merchandise and apparel. Only at the Funkin' Stuff store.
I saw him play in the last time I saw a full show was May 13th, 2011, when she did the Welcome to America tour, and Stevie Wonder's birthday was that day, and Stevie Wonder played on stage, and it's like, hear this great riff, this great bass riff, and I'm going, boy, that sounds familiar, that sounds really familiar, and then he just bends it slightly, and you realize he's doing Superstition, and Stevie rises up out of the stage and just going, oh my God, this is incredible, this is the biggest night of my life, and you just hear them doing Superstition, you're going, it's Stevie's birthday, Prince and Stevie Wonder are singing Superstition, and you're just going, I mean, even just talking about it, I'm going, I love that. And a fan of that stuff knows what I'm talking about, because there's an energy that you get. And like I said, seeing Stevie Wonder rise out of the stage, it's like, oh, is that him? Oh my God, it is. That's the best. So
I'd mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned on the air or before we came on air, but when I saw Stevie Wonder at Glam Slam,
right.
Prince called him on stage. It was like 3 a.m. by then or something like that. And they did Maybe Your Baby.
Oh,
and just to see Stevie doing it, laying it down, and Prince next to him with the guitar, looking at Stevie like you or I would look at Stevie.
mm-hmm.
Just here's his idol he's thrilled about. And to see Prince in that perspective was really cool.
One of the things I really liked about Prince is he made sure you knew who his idols were. Mavis Staples, George Clinton, Bootsy,
Larry Graham.
Larry Graham was the one I was going to say. You knew, and he threw so much respect to them. And what's cool is introduced a lot of people to them. A lot of people had not heard Mavis that were in this generation, and they're all of a sudden going, "Oh, what's this? This is fantastic!" And it's not just Melody Cool; it's having her open for the Nude tour, and that's where I saw her first, was in Cork, Ireland, and she opened for the Nude tour there, and I was going, "Oh, I knew her music, the Staples Sisters, but hearing her up there, you're going, oh, she's got a voice, she's got a presence, and you just sing it live." And I think that he introduced a lot of people, like you said, Larry Graham. Some people may be upset with the era of Larry Graham, but there's no denying Larry Graham is, an elder in the funk, and the things he brings to it. You could talk about his music for days, and Prince respected that and said, "Come on in with me and play with me and join in this." And there was just something full of joy about when he started recognizing, because I think early on in his career, he would tell people, I don't have any people that I but then once he started accepting that, yes, and I felt bad when he played with James Brown that time, and, kind of, he wasn't ready. He was not ready. And Michael Jackson was up on the stage with him. Michael Jackson was studying at the feet of James Brown for a long time. Prince had not, and not publicly acknowledged it like that. So it's, when you talk about going to the P-Funk, and he talks about playing Knee Deep and stuff like that, and you picture how much that must have been to him as a fan, and then he takes that and puts that into his career. I love that. So it's nice.
And Maceo too is one other one that
Oh
he
yeah,
reached
great
back.
call.
So
Yeah,
at least
great
he didn't
call.
get to do that with James Brown, but he had that
Oh yeah.
element,
Well, he used to say Maceo in songs before, and Maceo, and it would just be the horns because he was just so used to JB doing that. And anybody who's a fan of this stuff goes, oh, he's making a reference here, and that's fun when you get the callbacks. I love that stuff.
So Duane, a little bit more about you. How did you get involved way back with Uptown?
Um, Uptown had, for those who don't know, Uptown's a magazine out of Sweden that Pierre Nilsson was the person who was in charge of it. And it was a Prince fan magazine. And I saw, I think, the first issue or two. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I reached out to him, it was probably 1989, 80, 89, 90. And I reached out to him and said, are you looking for writers? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So we just started writing things, and I started interviewing people. And I supplied all the dates of when Prince was in the studio here in Los Angeles at different studios. I went to like Sunset, and I asked them, I was interviewing a lot of the engineers, and I asked them, you don't have the work orders for when he was here, do you? And they said, oh yeah, we do. And I was like, okay. And he said, you want a copy of them? I was like, maybe, yeah. But, trying not to jump out of my shirt. And so they let me copy them, and they just showing me how to do this. And that's what I brought to Uptown with a lot of these dates and stuff like that. It's funny, when I got the work orders done, the guy gave them to me, and he said, I told him we're writing this stuff, and he's like, hey, great, And as I'm walking out the parking lot, I'm thinking, at any point somebody's going to come out and say, we've been considering this. You might want to, So I'm like, but they were so cool there. A guy named Craig Hubler, who passed away, was the guy that did that for me. And they were so open, and Prince was such family to them that they wanted this stuff to be known that he did. Sunset Sound was basically Paisley Park before Paisley Park was Paisley Park. And it was just owned by somebody else, but Prince was always there. So when I started working for Uptown and Pierre Nilsson, it was voluntary. It was, we all were writing this stuff. It was just, we was a bunch of nerdy fans. Like we're having a nerd off here, it was a bunch of us nerdy fans just writing stuff but doing it with wanting the facts to be right, wanting the music to be told, the stories to be told about the music through the people that were there. So we interviewed Susan Rogers, Peggy McCreary, a lot of Coke Johnson, a lot of different people, engineers, as well as the band members. When we get interviews with different band members, Bobby Z got interviewed, all these different, I think Pepe Willie got interviewed, all these different people. And it became somewhat of a respected magazine. There's just a bunch of us nerds, writing this stuff. And it ended up going, I don't know if there's another fan magazine like that out there. Controversy, maybe, but I think Controversy is more about Prince the star, and we were about Prince
Documenting it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it was a great publication.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that a lot of us I'm still friends with a lot of people. The people that worked on that ended up going and making the Prince Vault, which is still a big, place for information. Any writer, any person working on things about Prince uses the Prince Vault as Prince. It's princevault.org, I think. They use that information there because it just is. I used it, and I made sure I credited that in the book. But all these people ended up going and doing this stuff, that worked on this. And Pierre Nilsson, who ran it, I'm still in touch with. We still talk every few weeks. It's funny, we've been working together on stuff for 30 years. I've never met him, only talked to him on the phone once in 30 years.
Wow.
I know. And that was only because I was trying to fax, he's in Sweden, and I was trying to fax him one night, and it woke him up. He had his phone on his phone. Was that back when you had a phone and fax in one thing? And I woke him up. He's like, hello, in a Swedish accent. Hello. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Pierre. And so that was the only time
you were out your welcome in that one.
I did. It took us 30 years to get over it. Yeah. But it's funny that I still have not met him or talked to him. And we've been friends for 30 years.
Did you guys ever make a serious run at trying to, interview Prince for Uptown?
We wanted to, but then he sued Uptown, and that kind of put a damper on it. He sued Uptown for using the symbol, and and it was like, wait, you gave us the symbol to use. You handed out discs with this on there. It's, so the big lawsuit, a guy named Alex Hahn, who's also a Prince writer, was the lawyer who worked pro bono on this, and he defended Uptown and said, look, they were given this thing to use. We won't use it again. And then I think Prince also was upset. They thought Uptown was promoting bootlegs. So what the agreement would be is that they don't talk about bootleg recordings. They could talk about unreleased songs, but not bootlegs. And that, it's fine. That makes sense. He was not happy with it. I agree with him. So that was what the lawsuit was. And I think the covers after that had to say uncensored, unofficial, whatever it was, the wording that they had. But I thought it was a great magazine. And they did the book called The Vault, which was still considered to be basically the Prince Bible. And Pierre Nelson did a book called DMSR, which is great. So.
And didn't he do one called The Documentary?
Yes, documentary came first. Documentary was the first book he did. And that turned into The Vault and Days of Wild and stuff like this. But that was the first attempt at really looking at his career, placing dates and stuff like this. And when we're doing this, doing The Vault, I mentioned to Pierre, I'd love to do a book about studio sessions. Like just a book. And he said, yeah, we laughed about it, I mean, on email, because we weren't talking. But we wanted to, I said, this would be great to do it. And then I started thinking, how do I do this? And that's where the book sort of came from, to jump ahead maybe, is I started working on on my first book. It took me about 25 years to do. As you understand, you do, because you took the same thing on your book. It's a lot of, you want it right, and you don't know where it's going to go. And the first book I was doing, I thought, oh, maybe I could do his whole career or studio sessions. And you realize, no, that's a lot. And
we also have day jobs. So
there's, yeah, I think people forget that, but yeah, it's, and anytime you're writing a book, it's a full-time job. It is, you are every day, every holiday, every evening, and I for a couple of years, I wouldn't take a day off, but I had toward the end of, beginning of 2016, I'd been working on this for several years by this point. My wife said, look, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in between jobs. I was a producer and stuff for TV. At the time I was doing the directing or producing it. And she said, look, you have a job here. You're finishing this job. You got a series of weeks here. Write. Just focus on the writing. And I did. And I finished the book in March of 2016, which is a month before he passed away.
I do have a copy of that here. So.
There you are. Look at that. I recognize that book. And Questlove did the forward for that. I was very happy with that.
That's phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. And but I finished it a month before he passed away. And then I thought, I don't know if I want to release this, because I just don't want to be the guy that's releasing stuff after he passed away. It seemed like the ambulance chaser or something like that. And I talked to some of the people I interviewed, because I interviewed, I think, 3 or 4 dozen people who worked with him. And they said, no, you've done a lot of work on this. So I found a publisher and got some more interviews to add to it. And the toughest thing for me...
Yeah, I got to just tell you one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
This show debuted in March 2016.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. So you understand that time period.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you understand the heartbreak. When you're that focused on something like that, like I was focused, it was tough for me when he passed away. And I still don't even like to say died. When he passed away, it's like almost I can't say. But I had to go through the book and take out all the Prince is and make it Prince was. And that was painful, because you don't realize the letting go a little bit that had to go with that, because it was like, I still in conversation, we'll talk about Prince is, and it's not accurate now. And so it was tough. That was, I think, one of the tougher things is the Prince making it past tense, because I never thought he would be past tense. He should have been an elder statesman. He should have been this 80-year-old guy teaching young people how to play, how to perform, how to manage a career, how to be an artist, and then giving out songs. Yeah, you young kid, here's a song I did back in the 80s. You can do it, cover that. He should have been that guy. And
Well, I tell
then,
people, I mean, he was pushing to, in my eyes, he was pushing the envelope still right up until the end. I mean, he doing the, piano tour and the stuff with Mono Neon he was doing late
mhm,
nights and
yep,
the hit and run, some of that stuff was kind of
absolutely.
experimental.
Yeah. He was doing what he wanted to do. What a great talent that is to be able to do what you want to do. You know, and you got a mind that goes on Monday morning saying, "This is what we're going to do," and then Tuesday you're going, "I've changed my mind." Maybe even Monday afternoon you'll change his mind. That's the way he was as an artist, and that's why we get so many varied things, and that's why there's so many things that are not released. Because he may be in the middle of a thing and go, yeah, I'm going to change this idea now. I want to do this instead, and you kind of have to respect that. And he was the one that could decide. The album was ready when he was done with it. That's the bottom line. The fun thing is, it's interesting if you look through the books, and 2 books I've written, you'll notice at the end of the month is when he started finishing albums. He'd give himself a mental date, like March 30th. I gotta be done with this thing. So like the last 2 or 3 days before that, he's like, oh, he's like doing all the finishing stuff. That happened on several albums. If you look at the first book, the end of January 84, he's like finishing the Time album. On the end of February, he's finishing the Apollonia 6 album. Like he would lock it down. And there was a self-imposed deadline, I think, probably. I'm sure Warner Brothers is saying, but at the same time, he's like, it'll be ready when it's ready. And I'm sure he put his finger up like that when he did that too.
So a lot of people may be focused on year ambitions, and
Right.
he had that funneled down to month.
Yeah,
at a
or
time.
day. Yeah, exactly. And you see that some of the things you look at the final version of a lot of these things was done the last day or so of a month, as if he's going, I gotta get this done because I gotta be able to flush this out of my head and move on to the next thing. I think that the other thing I think with a lot of his stuff, and this may be common with other musicians too, is when you start a project, there's a love. It's like dating, and you have this passion for this new love in your life, and you do all this stuff. But then toward the end, you're like, oh no, I got to get this done. And I think that that's what he had is he fell in love with what he was doing, and that's why the first part of it is always this passionate, big picture, lifelong commitment. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, I kind of have to finish this and get it out. And not that it was bad. I just think he was ready for the next wife, mistress, girlfriend, musical partnership at the end of that. I think that's the way it seems like that's the way he was.
Kind of like attention deficit disorder, but in a good way. For
I
music.
could see that. I could definitely see that. I mean, yeah, I mean, the guy had a lot of, when you have that many talents, you have that many directions. And if you just can play guitar, you're going to always be doing a guitar album, So if you can play everything, you're going to make a bass album, you're going to make a pop album, you're going to make a drum heavy album. You can do all that stuff. And when you learn a new trick or a new keyboard, you get the DX7, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can do an album that has this on it a lot, and I can do it fast. Oh, I get the Fairlight. Fairlight can do this. Well, and I can make it sound like this. And so in a week, you may do a whole album because you've got a new toy. And he was like that a lot of times. He went crazy on new equipment, and he wouldn't even read the instruction manual from what I understand. He would just go, what does this do? Oh, that's great. Roll tape, and you're just going, dude. And then laying down a drum track, finding a drum track on the LM1 and then adding some live drums to give it feeling. And then keyboards and stuff, and he's just going, oh my God, he's got something. He doesn't have to find it. He just has to pour it out. And that's the mind blower about all this stuff is so many times if you've heard bands do things where they start something and you can hear them kind of progressing and things like this, they're learning the groove. But he didn't have to do that with things mostly. He would just, all of a sudden the groove would be there. And he might add 5 tracks of guitar and then go, 3 of those are out, and or whatever it is. He could do this and this so fluidly and so seemingly effortlessly. And that thing is it's deceptive because the guy worked so hard that he looked like he could pull magic and air and music out of the air, and he looked like a magician more than a musician at times because it just appeared. It's like, no. When he's not on stage or in the studio or whatever he was, he was making that right. He was like they say, you know, you don't pay a surgeon for his time, you pay a surgeon for what he knows from the past 30 years. That's what with Prince is. It was all the things that he had done that led to that song, that led to this song, that led to that live show. And it was obvious he did the work, you know. You never saw him struggle. You never saw him struggle.
We're so lucky to be around, not only at a time when he was also doing his thing, but that he came up in a time when technology allowed him to accomplish what he accomplished too.
Right. That's true. Yeah, without that, he probably couldn't have done, without the LM, without the Lynn, he couldn't have done everything from Controversy on, because that's when he started, is on some of the Controversy tracks for using the drum.
But he would have been great in any era.
Oh, dude, the guy would have been great in the Baroque period. He would, whatever it was, he would have, you know, the guy just had, yeah, I think at any time in music history, he would have found a way to do what he did. Because he was music. As he said, he was music. There's no denying that period.
So after you finished the first book, you know, at what point did you decide you were going to make this a series as opposed to just a one-off? And, you know, did you kind of question your sanity a little bit to like jump right in again?
Yeah, I still do. I think it's the same way as somebody giving birth. You know, they're probably when they're the stirrups, they're saying, I will never do this again, ever. And then you see how much you love that book. You see how much you love the baby. And you're like, I'll do it again. And I think that's what happened with me. I was like, it was a lot of work. And the first book, like I said, over 20 years, really writing it on, you know, not every day for the first while, but toward the end, just really focused. And then, as you know, writing is rewriting. First draft is crap. And then you have to make the second draft look like it's supposed to look a little bit better, because you realize, I don't know what I was thinking there.
Unless you're Prince, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not. No one is. But it's
Stephen King, maybe, I don't know. But
Stephen King, I don't understand the ability to just sit there for, you know, that time and just write like he does. I have to have other things in my life. But I think that I once the first book came out and people liked it, I thought, yeah, I want to do that again. The first book I thought might be part of a series. I was hoping it would. And then I started thinking, what do I want to do for the next book? And then I thought, well, okay, let's do one on the next 2 years. So it's literally the sequel to the day. First book ends on December 31st, 1984. The second book starts January 1st, 1985. So it's literally that within hours of the first book. And this book, second book, ends with December 31st, 1986. So it literally is 2 complete years to the day. But it's not just, I think the thing that I have to explain to people who haven't read it is it's not just a bunch of dates. It is the story of what was happening told through his studio sessions and music and through the voices of all the people that were there. I interviewed all the Revolution, the family, well, except for Jerome, but I used a lot of quotes from Jerome, all of Apollonia 6. All these people talked to me and shared their stories and were open to, when I had questions, for me calling back and saying, I don't understand this. Can you walk me through here? And they would say, oh, wait, either here's the instructions about how that happened, or maybe you got a point that might have happened here. And people were open to not only what they remembered, but what they'd forgotten and were reminded to tell me. And that was kind of fun to hear people say, you know, looking back, I think that was on the 7th as opposed to, you know, and so that
some
was
discovery
fun
for them too.
Yeah, and it's fun when you're talking to people. Back then, you know, right now I can't do personal interviews with people, but when you're talking to somebody and you can see them rediscovering that, the smile comes on their face like a good time, like, oh yeah, I remember that. And there's something really fun about sharing that with somebody. And also, it's been a kick with some of these people. These are people that were legendary. And last year for my birthday, I was trying to get done the second book. And Wendy and Lisa both said, well, I'm available that day to talk. And I was like, that's my birthday. That'd be fantastic. So what a birthday treat that was to be able to interview them for a couple hours on my, you know, and I was like, this is really fun that I get an opportunity to do this. and hearing them tell stories and share, and people have cried. I've had people over the house, and they're listening to some of this music and start tearing up, and Brenda Bennett did that when she was over visiting, who was in Apollonia 6 and Vanity 6, and she was sitting there saying, it was a really important time for me. And you just see the wall come down of I'm a star to these are my friends. And that's what you hear from these people. And I think that's what gets expressed in the book a lot about is he was intimate. And I don't mean intimate sexually, although he might have been with some people. He was intimate with people, which means intimate as in shared stories and shared secrets. When you have friends that you can give each other a look and you know what you're talking about, or you say one word and you both laugh because that was a time that something stupid happened. He had that with these people, and trust. And music is about trust, especially on stage. You trust that when I go out on a limb, you guys are going to catch me and bring me back. And he had that with these bands. And hearing them tell these stories about the fun stuff is charming to me. I am a big fan of music. I love reading about music. I like all about. There's a book called The Beatles Studio Sessions. I loved. There's books about the Monkees in the studio. There's books about Eric Clapton in the studio, and that's what I kind of want to do. But I wanted to add more of a human touch to these things. Everybody can talk about the who, what, and when, but the why is really the most interesting thing to me. Is why did he do that? Why were they recording this? What were they thinking? That there's something about that explains everything.
That's really the objective of this show too. Truth and Rhythm is, documenting everything, but also, the why and the truth behind it.
And that's, the why questions, are the answers, because anybody can look up a date or things. How is also really important, and when you can find in documents, but you'll never find a why in a document. Why comes from here, and it requires thought, because somebody says, I don't know why we did it, and think, well, why? Think about why you did it. And they go, I think he did it because I was upset about this. He was happy about this. He had just eaten a good sandwich, or whatever it is. The why is the key.
How elements came together that ended up in that end.
Yes.
Result.
Yeah. And I think it's fun to find out what the influences were for songs. And sometimes it's not just one influence. Prince was not exactly monogamous. And so he might be inspired by several people, not necessarily he was sleeping with but that he was triggered by, inspired by, had a muse. And I think it's fun finding those elements and hearing, oh, this part was from this, and this part was from another person. And like most artists, they may have multiple inspirations. And I think that's one of the cool things about Prince is he allowed himself to be influenced by so many things and to find a way to express this, and so hearing things I never recognized before, or parts of songs that somebody says, oh, that's where they're playing this instrument, and this is the first time he played it, that kind of stuff is fun. Steel drums. Oh, that's how he did it. Okay, great. I love hearing that kind of stuff. And it makes me listen to the music with a new set of ears, if that makes sense,
Congratulations on both books.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Especially for someone like myself, I mean, they're just a godsend,
Thanks.
To fill in so many blanks and just also relive so much of it too. But, one of the things that's been amazing to me as well has been, since his passing, so much more information coming to light, because when he was still with us, they had non-disclosure agreements and zipped lips, for sure. And, I've never been into gossip and that kind of thing, but I do want to know what transpired,
I think there's a difference between gossip and the story of how something happened. A gossip is salacious, and there's some fun stuff in this that you're going, oh, that's kind of an interesting thing, because the guy lived a life that, was, a bit out there at times. But there's one time that, there's things that are just charming to me because it's insights into Prince. There's one story where the engineer, or the editor for Under the Cherry Moon was talking to Prince, one named Rebecca Ross, a very sweet person. And she was telling me a story about how she's standing there with Prince, and they're talking about Michael Jackson. And Prince is standing there in his heels and his ruffles, and full makeup and eyeliner and his hair done perfectly, and just, like I said, ruffles and velvet and all this other stuff. And he's talking about how strange Michael Jackson is. And you're just like, oh, okay. It's all about context, all about perspective. And I love that to him, there was nothing odd about him wearing ruffles and hair, and we all accept it. It's like, okay, that's now if I walked in the room dressed like that, you'd look at me like I was a lunatic. But he had gotten us all used to this so that we accepted it completely. This is Prince's, this is not an act. This is not a costume. This is what he wears. This is how he is. And you accept that.
Transcended all these things.
Right. And style-wise and music-wise, everything kept changing. And the fact that he would not see that as odd, but yet this is me. He accepted completely about that. So we accepted that about him. So many times you see performers and you're going, that guy's wearing a costume. I don't think that a lot of these bands that do this stuff, that wear these fancy things, walk around like that. I don't picture P-Funk walking around during the day.
Well, Bootsy.
Okay, Bootsy, yes. Okay. And probably, there's a few others, but you don't picture that being the case. This is my stage performance, my stage persona, and this is this. Whereas Prince, you come almost see him wearing everything he wore on stage in real life. And there was something about that made it authentic. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoyed so much about him, is there was an authenticity to what he gave and shared. And his artwork, his everything about that seemed real. And whether it was odd to us or to anybody else, we completely accepted it. And how many times did you do a costume change on stage? But each one of those things he wore would be something he could wear at any other time. You see him going to a party, or you see him going out to dinner, he was still wearing that stuff, and that's I think kind of fun.
When I saw him in '79 at the Roxy in Sunset, he was wearing the bikini briefs and the leg warmers, only singing falsetto.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, some brothers that were there, older than I was. I was a teenager, and they were like yelling "Princess" at him, and
of course,
and heckling him.
Mm-hmm.
The women that were there were swooning already. They were totally into it already. I saw the difference, and it definitely challenged some of my preconceived notions at the time.
Sure.
But he was so phenomenal that, like I said, he just transcended any preconceived notions.
Right.
And I was just going to go along for that ride no matter what.
I agree. I was the same way. I felt like the what he brought to it with his everything about him was an extension of him. And at that period, wearing the leg warmers and the bikini briefs was what he wanted to express. And yeah, that was more shocking, and that's probably why he did some of that. But it was like, it was such a shock at first to see that. I was like, okay, well, we accept it. That's how he led. He led with that. It was like, wasn't like all of a sudden he was doing normal clothes, and then that. To us, we saw that as the first thing. Like, okay, well, that's how it's going to be. And then each album had a different look and different, I look at, looking back, the Around the World a Day, he had the blue with the clouds, that suit, which I thought was really cool. And actually I was up in Minneapolis at one of the celebrations, which I suggest anybody go to if you get the chance to go to the celebrations. They're freaking awesome.
That I never got to do, and I regret it.
You should go to one when they do them. We'll do one next year probably, but go because first off, there's several things: the parties and the people and all this other stuff. The celebration of Paisley is one thing, but the entire town for that 3 or 4 days is Prince parties, Prince music, and there's an infectiousness to this, and you get to meet people that are lifelong friends from this. I have people that I'm so close to from just going to these places and dancing and hanging out with them. Anyway, there was they were taking a picture of one of the Prince groups. There's a lot of Prince groups out there, and one of the people, and they all these women dressed in the suit with the clouds, and I thought that's the coolest thing ever because it looked so cool. And I thought, I got to get me one of those jackets somehow. I got to get a jacket that has clouds on it. I would never wear it, but it's like that was, I thought that was really exceptional. I thought that really. There was a story. There was one of the women that worked for Prince, and I don't remember. I think I know who it is, but I don't want to say who it is, but just in case. But she worked on his boots in the 80s and 90s, and she was flying from one city to another, and she was working on the boots in the plane because she had, it was a commercial plane. And the guy in the seat next to her said, "Are those for Prince?" Like, he recognized that, of course they're for Prince. It's a boot that looks like you and I couldn't be walking around in those boots. Just like I don't picture Gene Simmons walking around in his demon costume, with the the things, or Ace Frehley with thing. You just didn't get that. But Prince, they saw the boots and they thought, yeah, that's Prince, and they knew that that's what he would wear on stage, in a studio, walking down the street, going for a hot dog. That's what he would wear, and you just going, oh, okay, I get it, I accept it. And that's one of the cool things about them. Well, even with Bowie, I felt like what he did on stage. I don't think he walked around as Ziggy Stardust. He might have for a little bit, but then he changed that. But I just never felt like he was. I felt that there's a theatrical presence as opposed to Prince, which I don't think Prince was being theatrical. I think he was just being Prince.
Although there certainly was a dichotomy with him that's very common among performers, in that he was, especially at certain times, so shy off stage compared to just being a tiger on stage all the time.
Right.
So
there was in the second book, I was lucky enough to get Elton John did the foreword for the second book.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. It was I would publicly thank Matthew Bitone, who was the guy who arranged that. And long story short, that was amazing. I mean, I will never
reading it. Yeah, it's really
but hearing so anybody knows, I won't give the whole thing away. But what happens is, it starts off with him walking up to Prince after a party and saying, "Hi, Prince. My name's Elton John. I'm a huge fan of your stuff." And Prince just went and walked away. And you're going, you don't walk away from Elton John. Elton John is one of the biggest selling artists of all time, literally more than Prince. He sold about 300 million copies of his stuff. And and Prince has not sold that many. And to walk away from Elton John shows and it wasn't arrogance. Elton John said he seemed to be shy. And that was the fun thing to me. And Elton John liked Prince so much that he accepted this. He said, "Okay, I'll accept this." And he walked up to him again and said, "Hi" again later. And Elton said, and Prince said, "Do you want to play on stage with me?" And so there's a whole story about that. It's just so much fun stuff to that. But the fact that you have a superstar, really one of the biggest entertainers in our generation, that felt such a kinship to Prince that he wanted to write a foreword to a book. That's, the idea that my name would be on the cover of a book with Elton John and Prince, Elton John, me. It's like, I keep laughing going, one of these things is not like the other, because I do not belong on that cover with those guys. And that's incredibly humbling to know that he read the book, liked the book, and wanted to write the foreword to the book. So thank you, Matthew. Thank you to Elton John and everybody involved with getting that, because, wow.
I have to get you some fancier glasses and some boots.
Oh, I'm wearing the boots now. Yeah, I got the boots on. But no, it's phenomenal. And I've never met Elton John, never even talked to him. But
there were precursors to, that kind of thing too. Just even going back to, the American Bandstand thing, and and the James Brown thing that you mentioned, and just throughout, We Are the World, and all these things were,
Oh, absolutely. The guy there was a shyness to him that you saw that.
Duane, I wanted to ask you, first off, I want to thank you for referencing Truth and Rhythm in the new book. So thank you for that.
Let me go back on that and open that up, because the cool thing about your show, and I want to make sure I throw as much props to you as possible, is you found a way to make it so we get to hear from the musicians, whether it's and not just musicians. I think that Eric Lee Alan Leeds was on, Lisa Coleman. There's so many people that you've interviewed that I was able to find nuggets of information and quotes. And in the back of my book, I make sure that your show is referenced a couple times, because you bring a lot to this, and what you're doing is you're talking to these people about the process and about music and about how it is with everything. That's invaluable. And when I use quotes from things, I always like to make sure I tell people where this came from. So what they can do is then look you up and look up your show and listen to not just the shows that I'm referencing, but see that you've got a litany of these things that are deep and important. And so I love that stuff. So when I saw that you wanted to talk to me, I got a little giddy because I was like going, I love this stuff. I love his show. I love what's done. So yes, I will completely confess to having pilfered through your stuff and put references to it in the book. And I hope that's okay with you.
Absolutely. I thank you for that and
Sure,
for the
sure.
credit. And, I have a modest goal with the show, Duane, and that is that every interview I do is the definitive interview of that person.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
had I known that beforehand, I would have set up straight and maybe put on
No
nicer
pressure.
shirt.
No pressure. No pressure.
Tell me that at the end. That's not fair. Then I'd be like, oh, I got another hour I got to talk about. I was a sad child, No, I know that. I think that you do, like I said, the Lisa Coleman interview you did, so there's hours of stuff you do with people, and I don't know how you get them to talk for 4 hours or something like that, but then again, we've been talking for what, a bit, and it flies by.
It
So
does fly by. That's what I tell them. Sometimes they'll say an hour. I'm like, hey, you know what? It's going to be nothing when we start talking.
Exactly. It's funny, when I was doing interviews for the book, there's certain people I talked to that I ended up talking for 8 hours to. Susanna Melvoin, I talked to her for hours. I don't know if you've talked to her before.
Not yet, but hopefully.
She's wonderful. She's absolutely such a sweet soul. Al Magnoli, who directed Purple Rain, he and I talked for 8 hours the first day, and I thought we'll talk for a half an hour, and literally we talked for, I'm not just joking, 8 hours. Some of the other people I've talked to for 30 or 40 hours. Not at one point. We'd have to get a meal somewhere in there. But, just at times, over time, Susan Rogers and I've talked extensively. Peggy McCreary, Wendy and Lisa. There's just so many people that, you can you find that time, and they are open to all this. And I think so the good thing about what you got is you got an undiluted thing where you got, here's the start, here's the finish. Everything you say is now on the record. Where I'm talking to people, sometimes they may be talking to me as a friend, and I got to make sure I'm not saying something that they're saying to me just because we're friends.
In confidence. Yeah.
I always make sure that what I'm saying, and if it's something that might be a little tender, I ask them, can I get clarification on that? Just so I know, because sometimes people have a bad day. But with your show and shows like yours and other podcasts, that's what you have. They know going into this with it'll start at this time and it ends with this time, and everything they say
unfiltered.
Yeah. And I think that unless they say to you, you know what, I look back and I regret that, maybe can you do something? And I'm sure that happens.
Yes.
And I think you do that probably out of courtesy, because people get comfortable and they say things, and they go, yeah, no, I shouldn't have done that. And I've done that before. I've asked, I think that's common, but I try to do the same expression with people. And I've had times I've written to someone and said, this is what you said. Are you, is this what you meant? Because I want to make sure I'm accurate. And I will tell you, even with this one, I think there's going to be probably some things I'm going, the first book is always, the first time a book is out is the first time it's in context for everybody. And there might be people that go, you know what, now that I see in this in context, can I change that? So I may have to change things for the paperback. And that happens. You may have a fact wrong, or you may have a name wrong, or something that your goal is to be as perfect about this as possible. But it's like 250,000 words in this book. There's going to be a typo occasionally, or there's going to be, somebody saying, I said that, but I don't think I would talk about the same date now that I think about it. Or you have information that may have been flawed from the start. And if the source is flawed or the memory is flawed, it's going to keep going. And something I said in the beginning of the book is memories of this kind of stuff are often like a dream, where you wake up in the morning and you got a bit of it, but it's drifting and you're not sure. 30 years on, I don't think people always remember what they had for lunch that day, and things like this. So the memories kind of blend. a little
Well,
bit.
well,
And
I don't know if you had any experience with this in your interviews that you did, but sometimes when you get more than one of them subjects together too, from the same band, and you
Mhm.
get them to answer questions together, they kind of start refreshing each other's memories. And
Yes, and isn't that the fun? One of the most fun things I had was not related to this necessarily, but I was out one time with a bunch of people who used to work for Prince, and it was an all off the record dinner we were having in Minnesota, and they were telling their stories, and I could listen to those stories all day long, and this is what you do on your show, but you have them telling the stories, and one say, and that's when I stormed out of the room, and the next one says, you want to know what happened once you stormed out? I'll tell you what Prince said, and so they are adding to the stories, and that's the best when you get the layered stories. And there's a part in the book that is like that, where several, I hope so, because I'll often say, this person said this. What, you were there? What do you remember? And they'll go, oh, and they'll be answering things. There was a part in the song Splash, and in the song Splash, there's a lyric about wintergreen something, and Susan Rogers is sitting there going, she realized that she had had these wintergreen mints in her purse, and she's like, that guy went through my purse. He went through my stuff. And she's like, ah. And then Wendy comes in from another interview saying, yeah, that's kind of what Prince would do. He would always looking for these references to things, and he would find this stuff. And then Lisa starts saying, and we started trying to sing the song and started saying, we're singing a gum commercial. And he's like, shut up and just sing it. And that to me is the charm, because it's like them inviting you into the circle of stories. It's like you're sitting around a fire, and all these people who were there are saying, let me add to that. And I love that. I love books like that. There's books that are just the paragraphs of people talking, no narration, no anything. There's a number of books that I just read a book about Battlestar Galactica like that, James Bond like that, Motley Crue had a book like that. I love those kind of books.
There's been books, Sly Stone's band, and
Oral history things,
and P-Funk too.
yeah, and there's just, when you start to see what the people doing, that story's building, there's without some yucca putts like me writing stuff, it's fun. And I try to make sure I get as many quotes in there as possible, and I try to put as few of my words in there as possible. I had to have the linking things, but the draw is the people that they're talking, not me. I just happen to be the ringleader at that moment, kind of saying, okay, let's put it like this. But it's them, and it's their stories, and they've been kind enough to share them with me, with the intent that these will be shared with you, not just you, but hopefully
the collective you.
Yeah, exactly, the collective you. But that's to me the draw of a book like this, or that kind of stuff, is the wide spectrum of voices, and sometimes they don't agree. Sometimes this person says that never happened, and somebody says I was in the room, and that is, and when I see that, I try to put both voices in there and say, I wasn't there, but this is what the documents say, and this is what the people say. They were there, and they deserve some respect and to be heard. And
there's perceptions are different too.
Oh yeah. No, they broke up with me. Oh, I broke up with them. There's of course. And so many people say, oh, I was in the room when that happened, and other people say, I was alone in the room when that happened, so I know you weren't there. But I want to make sure I convey this, because I think Prince also acted a little different on different people. And he might have said, yeah, this song's about you, baby. And then he sees another one and says, I wrote this song about you. And then you put them both in the room, they're going, no, that was about me. Oh, no, it's about me. And I think that you want to hear that stuff, and know that this guy was, the layers of what this guy was. And I think that makes the music, it's tough. I think Susanna Melvoin said, it's difficult to understand his music without understanding the man. And I'm blessed to have had so many people want to help me explain who the man was, because I never met Prince. I never worked with him. I can only go second hand. But that said, don't you want to hear from people firsthand? I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what, you're going to continue the series? And
I hope to. I mean, it sounds like people enjoy this book. So far the reviews have been really positive. And that's nice. I don't know how I top it. I don't know what I do, because it's a great era. Sign of Times is a fantastic era. If I do, I would like to go into the next book, maybe 87, 88, which is Sign of the Times Tour, Love Sexy, and the Black Album, which would be really
I think it's
fun.
about equally as good to me, but
Okay,
yeah.
good. Well, that's good. I think the music, maybe I'm trying to think of the story is. The
Mm.
story of this second book is really amazing because you have the transition between the revolution and the new band. At the end of the book, he submitted the album to Warner Brothers. It's been rejected. He doesn't have a touring band. He's broken up the revolution and he's breaking up with Susanna and his fiance. So there's a drama to what happens in the second book. I haven't looked into the third book. I've got it mapped out, but I don't know the behind. The story hasn't been revealed to me yet, and
Well,
that's kind of
there certainly was a lot of personal soul searching for him during that era with what happened with the Black Album and Love
yes,
Sexy, and
yeah, exactly,
so
exactly. And I think there's a lot to mine there, and I'm looking forward to it. The cool thing is I didn't know that the second book would be like it was, and as you know, when you write a book, it kind of comes to life in front of you. And you realize, oh, this is like when I was writing the second book, I didn't know how important the event of when the night of the American Music Awards would be, where he went out and his guards beat up had a somebody tried to take his picture, and I didn't see looking at it and how important that would be. And then when you start seeing it in context, you see that he started writing songs about that. Every interview he did after that talked about that, and his behavior changed, and you start to see that. And you're looking for that turn, and that's a big turn, I think, in his career, because up until then he was pretty much flawless and he's at the peak of his career, and then that night happened and you go, oh, okay, and you start seeing the repercussions of that over time. I don't know what that would be for book three, but I'm open. The nice thing is I'm just open to it. Bring it, and I want to see it, and I want to feel it, and I will express it. But I haven't interviewed some of these people yet. I've interviewed Kat Glover, and she's great. And I've interviewed Levi, and he's great. And but some of the people that were there for the first and second books are no longer there. And Susan Rogers is only in for the first 6, 7, 8 months of the third book. So it's like, okay, I've interviewed some people. I'm open to where the story goes. I'll see. I think it could be a really cool book, and I want to do it. And then possibly I'd like to go back and do 81, 82, which is the groundswell and Dirty Mind and Controversy, and then recording 1999. I think that would be fun too. So I'm also I'm 57 years old, and I kind of want to make sure that I have time to do all this stuff too. A book
you're
takes
his age.
And trust me, that did not go without thinking that when it happened. And that's the interesting thing, is you realize, oh, everything can be taken away in mid conversation at one moment. And so you start to think, I've got a child and I've got a wife and I want to spend time with them, but at the same time I have these stories I want to get out. It's like, when you know this many cool things, how can you not write? How can you not express that? And that's where I am right now. I've got stories I want to tell, and ways to pay back Prince for having given us so much. I want to make sure I can give that to everybody, and it's fun. And writing a book is great. And then there's an arrogance to when you write, because you're saying, I have something to say that's so important that you're going to want to have this on your nightstand, and you're going to want to spend 2 weeks reading this. But it's not about me. It's about expressing a passion I have for what Prince gave, and it always goes back to what Prince gave, and what we got from him. And if I can do a tiny bit of expressing how I feel and what he gave, and the parts of his heart he gave to all of us, I'm really happy. And the fact that it resonates with a lot of people is even better, because it is more just, now I know people that feel like I do, and it's a nice feeling. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so,
I'm so
yeah.
glad we could connect like this.
Absolutely,
Duane,
absolutely. This is a lot of fun. This is a lot. Even though you grilled me, and I'm gonna be, and as I said, the next hour I'm gonna be going, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that song. Ooh. But no, I just love what you bring to this. When you wanted to do a talk, I was like, oh yeah, that's the perfect forum. How could I not say yes?
give people the website and all that good information.
I don't know if this is on the screen, but you can see right down here, DuaneTudahl.com, which is my name. If you want to order a signed book of the second book comes out June 10th. It's called Prince
This
and
will air after that, but
what's that?
this will air after June
Okay,
10th.
well, okay. The second book. Let me change the tense again. The second book came out on June 10th. Yeah, probably for Evergreen. You want to just be saying by the time you see this, it'll be out. But you can get it from Amazon or Barnes and Noble or your favorite bookstore or the bookstores you don't like to. But you can, if you want to order a signed copy, you can go to DuaneTudahl.com and you can. Although it's very expensive to send it internationally, I suggest buying it locally if you're ever international. I'll happily send it, but I'm just telling you, the postage cost is very steep, but I'm happy to do it. I offer that. But I love signing books and I love personalizing them to people because I used to collect books, signed books by people, and so it's always fun to have a signed book on your shelf. But go to that site or go to Barnes and Noble, and if you get the book and like the book, please write a good review on Amazon. It's one of those things where good reviews and good word of mouth can only help. And I want to make sure the publisher knows that people like this stuff. Because I think when they first signed up to sell the book, they didn't understand there was a passion for this stuff. And there was an interest in this. And the fact that people do come out of the woodwork for this stuff and people do enjoy this stuff. And people have said that, Prince changed their life. And I don't think people outside the purple circle understand how important Prince was to us, and not just as a musician, but as an artist, as somebody who expressed what he wanted to, as somebody who did what he wanted to, and dressed like he wanted to, and changed the course of music in a way that really few have ever done. There's a reason why there's a celebration every year in Minneapolis. There's a reason why Prince fans are so dedicated and know stuff and want to know stuff. He brought that to us. He made us feel that we were part of a big family. And now that the leader of the family is not there, we all want to connect to our brothers and sisters and cousins and some big, slightly dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a bond, and you and I are brothers now, and it just it's fun having people reach out to me and say, dude, I love that story. And it's like, it's not even my story, but they're connecting with me because I helped say, oh, this is stories. Here's, and I'm in the mix somewhere. I just want to be in the room. And that's how I feel with this stuff. I feel like I'm in the room with this stuff when it's happening and can bring that to other people. What a joy that is. What a fun thing that is. So,
well, congratulations on all of it. And thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I look forward to the next book when I get done with that, talking to you again. Hopefully, I'm not an old man by then.
Yeah. Well, we can talk Prince anytime.
Absolutely. I hope we get together in person. That'd be a lot of fun. So thank you, man.
Thanks, Duane.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Truth in Rhythm. A big thank you goes out to our guest as well as to you, the viewer and listener. Also, much gratitude to Pleasure for supplying the show's funky opening and closing music. As a reminder, you can always access the complete list of linked shows by episode at funkandstuff.net. I urge you to support this program and receive the extra benefits along with that by subscribing to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube and sharing it with funk, R&B, and jazz lovers, joining Truth and Rhythm's membership program at Patreon, submitting a donation at funkandstuff.net, buying Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk book at Amazon, shopping at the Funky Things store for cool merchandise at funkandstuff.net, and linking through funkandstuff.net for all of your Amazon purchases. In addition, if you're an artist or anyone seeking proven, results-oriented professional marketing, PR, writing, or editing consultation or production, check out the media services section at funkandstuff.net. Also, I encourage you to drop me a line at scottg@funkandstuff.net. I love the feedback, suggestions, guest requests, appearance and sponsorship inquiries, and just talking about my favorite subject, groove-based music. For now, and as always, this is Scott Dr. GX Goldfine saying,
Keep on vibing to the rhythm of the one.